Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Ready to get into some more fascinating knowledge with us today?
Absolutely. I know I am. Always love a good deep dive, and I'm especially excited about this one.
Me too. Today we're taking on pest control legends and horror stories. You know those stories that make you wonder, are they just myths?
Yeah.
Or is there actually something to them?
I've got to say, in my years running Pro Pest Control Melbourne, let's just say I've seen enough to know that sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction.
I bet. Okay, so let's start with a classic. Giant sewer rats. The ones that lurk in the shadows, growing as big as cats, urban legend, or a real threat.
You know, it's funny you should mention that. Most sewer rats, well, they're not exactly hitting those monstrous proportions. But there are some species, like the Gambian pouch rat, that can get pretty big.
Really, those actually exist. I always figured that was just a scary story to keep people away from the sewers.
Oh, they're real, all right. And you know, when you think about it, rats are incredibly adaptable. Plus, suitors, as gross as they are, have tons of food sources. So it makes sense that some of them would thrive and, well, maybe grow a bit larger than their above-ground cousins.
Okay, I am officially adding avoid sewer grates to my list of life rules.
Yeah.
But what about this one? Cockroaches surviving nuclear explosions. Is that a testament to their resilience? Or is it a sign that we're all doomed to share the planet with them even after an apocalypse?
Ah, yes, the indestructible cockroach. I think we've all heard that one. And it's not entirely false, you know. They wouldn't survive a direct nuclear blast, of course, but roaches are really resistant to radiation, much more so than us humans.
But how is that even possible? I mean, they seem so fragile.
It's all in their biology. They have simple bodies and their cells divide slowly, which makes them less vulnerable to the damaging effects of radiation. It's kind of like they're built tough, you know, able to withstand some pretty extreme conditions.
So basically, we're talking real-life superbugs. Fascinating. And maybe a little terrifying.
It definitely makes you appreciate their tenacity, let's call it. Okay, changing gears a bit. Have you ever heard the one about finding hundreds of baby Huntsman spiders in cars? You know that Melbourne legend?
Oh yeah, that one makes my skin crawl just thinking about it.
It does sound like something out of a horror movie. But Huntsman spiders, they love warm, dark spaces. And a car interior, especially during egg season, well, it's like a perfect little spider nursery. Not something you see every day, thankfully. But it's definitely plausible.
Okay, I'm never looking under my car seats again. You know, as much as I love learning about all these creepy crawlies, I think I'm ready for some actual horror stories. I bet those are even wilder than any legend, rather. Okay, so you've definitely primed us with some pretty creepy legends. Now hit us with those real-life pest control horror stories you promised. What's the most shocking thing you've encountered out in the field?
Oh man, where do I even begin? Well, there was this one call we got from a family. They were complaining about this like really weird smell in their walls.
Oh, okay. That's already pretty unsettling. I can't even imagine what kind of smell would warrant a call to pest control.
So we go out there, and it turns out it was a giant wasp nest right there in the wall cavity. And that smell, it was coming from all the decaying nest material and just thousands of wasps living in there.
No way. I never even considered that wasps could build nests inside walls. That is really unsettling. How did they even get in there?
You wouldn't believe it. They can squeeze through the tiniest cracks and crevices. This family, they had a few small gaps in their siding, and the wasps, well, they just found their way in. Went totally unnoticed for who knows how long.
So what happened when you opened the wall? Did they all come swarming out?
Let's just say it wasn't pretty. Thousands of wasps pouring out of the wall like something out of a nightmare. Thankfully, we were in full protective gear. But man, could you hear that family screaming from inside the house?
Okay, you win. That is a horror story. I'm adding check for wall cracks to my to-do list right now.
It's not a bad idea. Regular inspections can really save you a lot of trouble. Speaking of nightmares, let's talk about bed bugs.
Ugh, no, not bed bugs. Don't tell me this is another warehouse infestation story. I'm still traumatized from the last time.
No, this one's a bit different. We got a call from this hotel owner. He was having, well, let's just say, a major bedbug problem.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. That's like every traveler's worst nightmare. How bad was it?
It was pretty widespread. They were in multiple rooms, even starting to show up in the lobby, which is never a good sign.
Ugh, that's just horrifying. What did you even do?
It was a big job. We had to, do a whole treatment plan, heat treatments, insecticides, and then vacuum every single nook and cranny.
So basically you had to fumigate the whole hotel.
Pretty much. But we got it under control, eventually.
I bet those guests were thrilled. Yeah, talking about all these horror stories just makes you think, Pests are like the ultimate home invaders, right? They can sneak in anywhere, cause all sorts of chaos.
Yeah, you're not wrong. They're masters of infiltration. And they can be really persistent, especially when it comes to finding food and shelter.
All right, one last horror story before we move on to something a little less, well, terrifying. What's the most unexpected pest encounter you've had?
This one was a real surprise. Got a call from a client complaining about weird noises in their attic. So we go up there to investigate, and wouldn't you know it, we find a massive snake eating a rat.
Wait, hold on. A snake? In an attic? How did that even happen?
Slithered right in through a hole in the roof. Just goes to show you never know what you're gonna find.
Okay, that's it. I'm officially calling it quits on attics. Forever. Anything I need up there can just stay there.
I don't blame you. These stories definitely highlight how important it is to be aware of your surroundings and, take steps to prevent these guys from getting in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, you have officially scared the living daylights out of me with those horror stories. But before we all spiral into a full-blown pest-induced panic attack, let's talk about some practical tips for prevention. All right, so we've talked about the myths, and you've definitely given us our fair share of real-life pest horror stories. Now, I'm ready for some actionable advice. How do we protect our homes from becoming a scene from one of your stories?
You got it. And honestly, the key is prevention. It's all about being proactive, making your home less appealing to pests in the first place, and then sealing up those entry points.
Okay, so where do we start? What's the first line of defense?
First things first, you want to do a really thorough inspection of your home. Check for any cracks, gaps, holes, anything like that in your foundation, walls, windows, doors, even the roof.
So, become best friends with caulk and weather stripping?
Pretty much. You'd be surprised at how small those entry points can be. I mean, a mouse can squeeze through a hole the size of a dime.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay, so once we sealed up the exterior, what about inside our homes? What can we do there?
Inside, it's all about keeping things clean. Really good sanitation, wipe up spills right away, store your food in airtight containers, don't leave dirty dishes lying around, and take out the trash regularly.
Right, because otherwise it's like we're laying out a welcome mat for them.
Exactly. Think of pests as tiny little burglars. They're always looking for an easy meal. You also want to eliminate any potential nesting sites. So keep clutter to a minimum, vacuum regularly, change your bed linens often, all that good stuff.
Okay. I'm starting to feel a little less panicked, knowing that there are steps I can take to prevent this stuff. But what about those, really stubborn pests, the ones that somehow manage to sneak in no matter what you do?
Well, that's when it's time to call in a professional. If you're dealing with a persistent problem, don't hesitate to reach out to an expert.
What should people look for when choosing a pest control company?
Make sure they're licensed and insured, of course. And, look for a company that uses environmentally friendly pest control methods. It's important to make sure they're taking a responsible approach.
Right, so it's not just about getting rid of the pests, it's about doing it in a way that's safe for our families and the environment.
Absolutely. That's why at Pro Pest Control Melbourne, we focus on integrated pest management, or IPM.
IPM, what's that?
It's basically a holistic approach, right? It combines a bunch of different pest control methods, prevention, monitoring, targeted treatments, and it really prioritizes the least toxic options first. We only resort to those stronger chemicals if we absolutely have to.
That sounds like a smart approach. So before we wrap up, is there one piece of advice you would give our listeners about pest control? Like the most important thing to remember?
Knowledge is power, I always say. The more you understand about pests, their behavior, their habits, all that stuff, the better equipped you'll be to prevent them and deal with them if they do show up.
Well said. This has been such a fascinating deep dive into the world of pests. Thanks so much for sharing your expertise and those unforgettable stories.
My pleasure. Happy to help demystify things a bit.
And to all our listeners out there, we hope you learned a thing or two about separating fact from fiction and about how to keep your home pest-free. Remember, prevention is key, and if you're ever in doubt, don't hesitate to call a professional. Until next time, stay curious and keep those creepy crawlies at bay.